All right, so I'm Joe.
I'm
This is
Art.
Art.
Yes.
Welcome to the Tangent Lounge. So this is our first attempt at podcasting, something we've talked about
Like
for
2 years plus.
yeah,
A hot minute.
yeah, and we get a little bit going forward, and then it would
Yes.
be like, okay, time is passing. So Arter and I are two people with similar backgrounds,
Yeah.
but super different backgrounds as well. But we do have commonality of being veterans, and kind of our thoughts behind doing this were how do we remain connected but do something that we both find super interesting.
That's facts.
Yeah. So we decided to kick it off with such a very relevant topic, and after we had watched it for a little bit earlier, realized it was something that after many years we knew little bit about with each other. So today we saw the uh, Pope being unveiled, white smoke was popped. We all got excited, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was stoked.
We all wanted to be there. But, we both found out that we had that commonality of being Roman Catholic. But we just wanted to discuss on the tangent lounge wherever this conversation will go.
This is gonna be a weird rabbit hole, I think.
I think it will be a super weird rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But maybe you'll learn a little bit about us, and I mean, there's a million other things you could be doing. We want to learn more about each other. You all get to do that with us. So,
Yeah, so gosh, Pope Leo the 14th.
yeah, yeah, indeed. As Crystal was saying, I'm not even sure. I think I remember, Pope John Paul II
Yep.
because
Yeah,
through
what
like,
1978, I believe he
yeah, and for a good long time, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you can tell, we are both Roman Catholic by birth or
Tradition, yeah, but
baptism or
not
family
practicing.
relations. So we both do have that in common, but
Yeah.
apparently we're not the greatest Catholics.
No.
But we did enjoy watching today, the new Pope, the first
Yeah. You know,
U.S. Pope,
the what?
first U.S.
The
Pope.
first US Pope, man. Um, I don't know why I get excited whenever there's this, gosh, I mean, I was born in 1980, so I think this is only my second, maybe third Pope election, but I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just knowing that, on my mom's side of the family, that because, Catholicism that ran strong with my mom's mom and her mom. I just get excited for the Pope, and I don't know. I have always listened when the Pope speaks. I don't know why. I'm not a practicing Catholic. Um, yeah, I don't know. Just the Catholic side, I guess. I don't know if that's instilled or what, but yeah, the Pope speaks and I listen, and I guess that was reflective of this Pope too, because what I was reading about our new Pope, Leo, was that he is known in the church as not somebody who does this a lot. He's not running his mouth a lot or regurgitating stuff. That he's a strong listener, and that he can be known to be quiet.
And again, since this just happened earlier this morning,
Mhm.
I think it resonates when the Pope talks to maybe from for how we feel generationally when we think
Yes.
about people like that. Um, even if it wasn't, even if we were both other religions, I think we would have enough respect to be like, okay, that's the Pope,
Yeah.
Um, and I think the other thing too, at least for me personally, um, I think it's interesting to listen to what the Vatican says, not only from a religious standpoint, but from a political standpoint, from a global
Yes.
standpoint. And I think when the Pope speaks, at least for my opinion, even though I know it's colored and shaped by many different factors, you almost feel like Well, that's the Vatican. They are responding to something from a very independent manner, from an objective
Sure.
manner, because they are their own thing. And I think for us, that can kind of resonate a little bit because we
Yeah.
like that, you know,
Yeah. I like that you brought up about the impact on the church. Or even the, how do they say it? Is it papacy? Papacy?
papacy, maybe.
Papacy,
Yeah.
like the presidency papacy. Um, or just, maybe not so much the church itself, but the Pope himself, what he embodies, right? He's the direct line of the to God,
Right.
in this form. Um, but that, one or the other or both is a combination of the church and the Pope together, right? Because the Pope is the church as well. Is how they impact things like social change and social justice. And I thought that was interesting that you kind of brought that up, the impact of the church, because Pope Leo the 14th drew his name. He is, um, I guess, drawing off of the energy of Pope Leo the 13th. And what I do know about Pope Leo the 13th, and they actually discussed it this morning on the news, was that he was a pope actually known for being a warrior for social justice and social causes.
Okay.
And I think that in today's environment, um, knowing that this pope is also not overly outspoken, but when he was a cardinal and as a priest, he wasn't afraid to stand up when you know the majority want to say, yeah, everything's great, but he was able to use his eyes and stand up and say, well, everything's actually not great. And
Right.
and I hope he does that as the Pope. Um, and I'll say it in, we can avoid this topic because I know it can get a little deep, but I hope that he has the fortitude to also do that from within the church because I think that everything is not great within the Catholic Church. And it hasn't been for some time. And we obviously know, some of the past things that the Catholic Church has faced with, altar boys and sex scandals
Right.
and their views on homosexuality, same sex marriages and relationships and a whole plethora of things that I think Pope Francis really worked hard to start breaking down those barriers. And I'm really curious if this new Pope Leo um, is going to have that fortitude or even the desire, or is he going to get that conviction from God in his prayers where he says, you know what, it is time. Like if you look at the history of the papacy, I don't understand. We know that Peter, the first pope, was Peter, the follower of Christ, the one who walked on water with Jesus
Right.
there in the Sea of Galilee, I believe. Um, he was married. It's in the Bible. It's documented. He had a wife, and a lot of popes after him had a wife. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we get this one pope, and I don't know his name. We're gonna put it on the screen. Um, Says nope, no pope from this point on shall be married. Like, why did that happen? Like, it's
Yeah.
weird. So I know Pope Francis started talking about the church should re-examine the options for a priest to be able to get married. The Catholic Church should start to re-examine their views on homosexuality based on the true or not even the context, but the true text in original form of what the Bible says about homosexuality. And a whole bunch of other things to where Pope Francis was able to be a critical thinker, and I'm really curious to see how our new pope gets involved with all these social issues going on, and how people view the church, and why people run away from the church because of those.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things when you talk about, will he still follow those inclusive values that were kind of laid down? Uh, one of the interesting things, the various orders within the church, and I know he had stated too that even though he came from a specific order as a bishop,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
in
yeah,
his previous positions, that he was looking to guide all Christians. So, I mean, to your point, will he continue those things? I mean, that remains to be seen. But
yeah,
uh, from your question and his statement today, I find that interesting that maybe that does align with how you look at it.
yeah. Um, so this morning when the Pope gave his initial speech to the people there, at St. Peter's Square, he did something that I really liked. Yes, he's the first U.S. Pope we've ever had, U.S. born Pope, I guess would be the appropriate way to say it. Because he's not the Pope of America; he's the Pope for all people. So,
Right.
but he gave a speech, and he did it in both Italian and Spanish, and not once did anything in English. And I think that that was appropriate and sent the proper message to the world for those who think about it that, wow, this guy is American. And I think that we as Americans are sometimes viewed as very boastful and, kind of arrogant. And he went in the opposite direction and only spoke in Italian and Spanish. And for me, that's a powerful message.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting because, yeah, he did go back and forth in Spanish, probably to honor the positions he had while he was in Peru, and,
Yeah.
the Italian to recognize, you know,
Yeah. It reminds me of another time where something kind of similar occurred there at the Vatican. Not directly, but I think you'll understand where I'm going with this. Is that um, when President Kennedy, our 35th president, when he met with the Pope, Kennedy came from a very strong Irish Catholic family.
right,
Very, pretty rooted in their Catholicism and Mass. Um, when he met with the Pope, I don't know what Pope it was at the time, but as popes do, they offer their ring out, for the respect to be shown and for one to kiss the hand of the Pope or the ring. But instead, President Kennedy chose to not do that and to just shake the Pope's hand because Kennedy wanted to send a message to the world that, yeah, even though he is Catholic, he still has to fulfill his role first as the president of the United
right.
States, and as one of the most powerful world leaders that there is and was. And so I've always liked that little tidbit of historical fact about President Kennedy.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. And again, I'm glad that this topic came up because it's very interesting.
Yeah,
Like, I really didn't think that that was something that, like, okay, I know you have so many different interests, and it always, I find it interesting when I'm like, oh, there's, another facet of art that I'm like, all right, cool.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I never really thought about it. Obviously, when we both entered the military, they asked you to put, a religion, and
yeah,
that was the religion of my family, and I went to Catholic school for a time,
sure,
so I had that connection. But when things like this happen with the Pope, and again, as long as we've known each other, never really a topic that.
we've I don't think we've ever spoken about our current or core religious beliefs with each other.
Yeah, no, I mean, which is really kind of wild,
Yeah,
but I think speaks to both of us too, because uh, I think, we're both lifelong learners. Like that's,
yeah, I'm a student of history, 100%.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah,
we both have that same love of people, understanding the similarities that we all have, trying
sure.
to understand the differences, especially in this day and age, can be challenging because find that at times, even if you're just being inquisitive, so that you can update your opinions. People are very sensitive about you, how you ask things and why you're asking things, and I think we've always been people that were
Yes.
really just inquisitive by nature,
Yeah.
one from a knowledge standpoint, and two, And you will find this out in further episodes. We can be funny in our own ways, be
For sure.
raunchy in our own ways. So, you know,
I I had this mentor early on in my naval career, and he used to tell me all the time. He'd say, "Stoddard, I want you to remember this one thing about life." And I said, "Okay, what's that?" He said, "Seek to understand in order to be understood."
yeah,
And I didn't understand what he meant. So I just said, "Okay." And this was out on the smoke deck. And as I finished my cigarette and I was putting it out, it came to me that like you're about to violate this one thing right away. So I walked back up to him and I said, "What does that mean?"
yeah,
And he's like, "You almost walked out of here without even knowing." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "But instead you turned around and you came up and you asked me, what does it mean to seek to understand in order to be understood?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Exactly what you're doing. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask why."
yeah.
And I never forgot that lesson. And that's why I read so much, man. I'm a sponge for information and conversation and other views. And I think that is where the value of diversity comes
Yeah, I mean, I feel with many topics, I think a lot of people have their own individual opinions about things, but at the core of it, I mean, I think we all have so much more commonality that we don't appreciate. Everybody's trying to find a way to be
from.
different than appreciate the fact that like we do across the board, have a core human values almost that we're very
Yeah.
common about.
I really do see a lot of stuff ultimately come down to the existence or the lack of a presence of love. It's just that and it doesn't mean like love, like, oh, let's kiss kind of love. I mean just true love, compassionate, its purest form, and being able to ask somebody why they feel the way they feel. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? There's case studies on this about serial killers and why did they do what they do and
Right.
why did they did why they did what they did. And there's also been case studies um on terrorists, man. There's I read about this one case study, and it was talking about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Okay.
And that dude, we're gonna put a picture of this guy right here. But when they arrested him, he was looking like that porn star Ron Jeremy. It was just, oh, he looked
Okay.
gross, man. Um, but if you read about like why he had such a distaste for America, was because freaking Americans caused it, man. Like he was going to school in North Carolina. I was reading, and he was treated so badly and hazed, like uh he'd be in his dorm room and they would lean a trash can up against his door full of like bacon, raw bacon and pig parts, and knock on his door. When he'd open the door, it spilled into his room.
Oh wow.
And with him being Muslim, um the pork aspect is, that's a huge thing.
Right, right, right.
And I'm like, crap, man, if I got treated like that every single day, like I would hate every single one of those people.
Right.
You know what I mean? But yet, because he was in this cocoon of college and he didn't go out much, I think that prevented him from maybe seeing that there is a good side of America. There are good people out there, and you know, and so compassion, man. The absence of compassion for who he was as a young man coming to America because he had heard about the American dream and the education system in America, and to have that completely ruined by Americans, it's just that's a weird circle.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when you tie that back to, our overall faiths, again, being Roman Catholic, I found it from a very young age to be very stiff and confining, but
Yep.
I don't know if I really remember formally going to church. I must have had communion Initially, there was uh, church in our neighborhood that I went to. But there were some times where, my growing up life was pretty chaotic, and I don't know if I saw the church from a religious standpoint. I
Sure.
saw it from a, little kid viewpoint that, like, hey, this building is always quiet. People
Yes.
are always mellow. I
Yeah.
mean, I thought of it as a place to just escape the chaos. As a little kid,
Sure.
I'm not, there's no deep thinking there. You have a very generic view of the world. So I just thought of a church as a safe space to go and hang out and escape from, the
Yeah.
chaotic life that I was living. The child of a single mom in the 70s where things were a bit different.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
what do you remember, like, at a, what age you ever really thought about religion in a, really direct way?
Like
Or
a spiritual understanding that wow, like what is God and like
yeah, I mean,
what is
just
yeah.
how did you grow? I mean, I know you said one side of your family is Roman Catholic, so were you guys
Yeah, so my mom's side was
churchgoers or?
Catholic and my dad's side was Pentecostal.
Okay,
So
all right,
heads and tails,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
both love God, but they do it in their own unique
right,
ways.
right, right,
Uh, yeah, so even as a kid, my dad never went to church ever. Um, but my mom would make sure that we had that exposure to Jesus, and because she was married to my dad, my mom didn't practice Catholicism. Um, which was weird because my dad said, "Well, no, we are this," but my dad didn't really practice, so it was really strange. But my dad and my mom both insisted that me and my little sister had that exposure to the church and understood the word and kind of lived that. And so we were going to this Baptist church down in Southern Florida, and that's what I did as a kid. And then going into high school, we moved back up to Michigan, and we started going to my aunt and uncle's church, and that was the Church of the Nazarene.
okay,
And it's not a bad church that to be a part of. I mean, the Nazarene Church, that church had some very loving people, but for me, it was just it was boring. It felt very formal. I've never been one of those guys who wanted to have to say, amen. I'm just
right,
like, can I get an amen kind of guy? You know what I mean? Like growing up, I questioned this and I would get in trouble for asking the question, because we're always told we're made in God's image and, all the great things in life God has given us. I'm like, why did none of these people smile then? And I've
yeah,
always been about laughter and smiling. And then I remember when I went to live with my dad, this is well after my parents' divorce, up in northern Michigan. And that's where that Assemblies of God church, the Pentecostal blood, it got me, man. And that was when I truly, truly, as a teenager, I was, gosh, 16, really started looking at my faith and what it meant to be part of the church and what was, and I don't mean this in some weird like Marvel bad guy way, but like what was the power of the church? You know what I mean? And by that I
right.
mean I guess the impact, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, I find
So
that interesting too when and I think about both of us kind of personally when you talk about, uh, everybody seemed very serious in the Catholic faith.
yeah.
When you went to church area, you had those interactions,
Hmm.
and as you're talking, I'm kind of thinking about too, like, well, I kind of felt that same way too. And we were both people that while we were in the Navy, really embraced the Navy,
Yeah.
and still do, certain core components,
100%.
and I and I know we knew a ton of people who were many different religions or no religion while we're in the military.
Yeah.
But I think about that now from the Roman Catholic aspect that we both had a little bit of that
Yeah, that taste.
regimentation already
Mhm.
built into our systems. Is that why we click with the military so well? In a Catholic service, you're used to, I'm standing, I'm kneeling, I'm praying. They all happen at very specific
Yeah,
times.
it's
It's
orchestrated,
very
choreographed.
regimented and
Yeah,
orchestrated, like
yeah,
marching and doing facing movements and your general orders,
yeah,
right? So did kind of, I mean, I think we would have been the same people in the military regardless,
yeah,
but did having a little bit of that Roman Catholic background and some of that order and structure, and they're very strict, and I think that was in my interactions with it as a young kid too, that I found it to be more scary than loving, right? That
yeah,
they had a lot of rules, and you better follow all these rules,
yeah.
mister, because we have consequences if you don't follow the rules. So I found it very intimidating. And again, there are some components that are similar with our military
Yeah, I mean,
experiences
got the
sometimes.
UCMJ articles, 77 through 134, I believe, or 88 or 87, whatever. It's been a long time.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I can see from your from that early initial exposure to the Roman Catholic faith, and then a little bit later on, I can see where the Pentecostal style kind of fits with like who you are, and your
yeah,
personality seems to be lighter and loving. Where,
yeah.
but I can see some of that Roman, again, framing it through the lens of the Navy. I can see some of that Roman Catholic
Oh, yeah.
background, you know and I find that interesting. And again, even though it's never a topic we've talked about, I mean, I love making those connections and
Yeah.
go, oh,
Like,
okay,
that makes sense.
right, right, right.
You know,
Like,
again, this goes back to just seeking to understand in order for you to also be understood. Because if you understand, then you're going to, you know what I mean? So that's why I love conversations with people.
yeah,
I'll talk to anyone. I know you're the same way, man. You're like, yeah, I'll talk your ear off for 5 minutes, but I'm going to ask you a lot about you too.
right, right, right. I find that super interesting. I mean, uh, I'm not a big fan of small talk
Me
and
either.
Uber rides and
Yes.
and Waymo rides. And Art and I
Oh,
are learning also new things. Art's currently living in Orlando, Florida,
yeah.
and I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and they don't have Waymos in
No,
Florida. They don't
no.
have robot vehicles that just whisk you from place to place in Florida.
Yeah, that was funny that now we got here and we're at that light and that car pulls up and I'm just there's no driver in that car, but there's people in the back seat. What is happening?
Yeah,
So strange.
yeah, but it's awesome. I mean, I think about that, and I do joke that that is one of the benefits. Or is no driver, you don't have to make that small talk banter.
Yes.
Um, but I do enjoy that about Uber rides or Lyft or whatever platform you're using. We don't endorse or really care. Whatever
Yeah.
you do, you boo boo. Um, but I do enjoy some of that banner sometimes with Uber drivers, because one of the first things that I'll normally ask is, is this all you do, or is this your main job? And interestingly enough, there's very few of them that don't have either another main profession or
Yeah.
another, they're doing multiple side hustles. So I find that's a little way to learn something for people, but I always find that interesting
Oh, for sure.
because you can find out interesting Uber stories, but they probably do something else that's
I
cool
follow
or
a guy
interesting.
on YouTube and he is a card carrying bar pass lawyer who drives Uber on the weekends. And
Hmm.
as former Navy recruiters, I'm like, well, heck yeah, that's smart. You can give everybody a friggin' business card. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then he streams, live from his Uber, and he like gives lessons in law and stuff, and talks about like case law while he's driving. So it's a great channel. But yeah, going back to what you said, it is cool to see that. Yeah, for some of these Uber or Lyft drivers, um, it's not their only job or career in life. Some of them
Right.
are like lawyers.
Right.
It I started smiling when you started talking about people who drive Lyft and Uber. The late great George Burns had one of my favorite quotes is that it's too bad that the people who really know how to run your country are busy cutting hair and driving taxi cabs. And I always laughed at that quote, like thinking about, back in the day when George Burns was alive. That is where you always heard the strong political conversations was when you're getting your hair cut and when you're sitting in a taxi cab and the driver starts going off about everything he had heard on talk radio that morning. So George Burns.
Yeah, I mean, this will probably be the point of the video where those of you under 40-ish will probably have to pause and Google who George Burns
Yeah.
is and go, why does Art care about this old guy? Because George Burns was probably old 50 years before he passed away.
Yeah, I think he was in his friggin' 80s when I was, a child watching his movies.
Yeah, I mean, he
Yeah.
always seemed like he was a bazillion years old. But yeah, some of you will probably have to Google to figure out who he is to
Yeah.
understand,
Always had a long cigar hanging out of his mouth.
yeah, the humor in Art's quote and the
Yeah.
funniness behind that person because he truly was a very funny and loving human being.
Yes.
I can remember at a very young age, and I can't remember. He had a couple of books out, and I remember reading one of his
Yeah.
books and just thinking, truly a person who lived a life and was very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, George Burns, haven't thought of him in 1,000 years.
I'm
Yeah.
always thinking about him because I'm always thinking about that quote every time I'm like listening to people get into political conversations. And I just, for some reason, my brain drifts, which is perfect for the podcast being the tangent lounge. My brain just drifts off and I start thinking about that quote from George Burns and I just chuckle.
Yeah, it's totally funny.
Yeah.
Again, Google away. George Burns,
George Burns.
hilarious person.
He's a
You'll love
national treasure when he was
him.
alive.
National treasure while
Yeah.
you're joking. And one of the most unique and interesting love stories of all time, too.
Not familiar with it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, see, we'll get smarter too.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. All right. So we start off with religion. We're talking about robot cars.
Yeah. Oh, can we go back to that?
Robot cars?
cars?
Sure, I'm always up for crazy
Yeah.
shit to talk
No,
about.
I have this thought just now when you're talking about when you're in one of your Mimus or Waymus or whatever you call it, your
Waymos.
driverless cars. Um, God, if Crystal was here, she'd be like, "You are fucking crazy for recommending this." But that would be the perfect place to put an AI software to engage in dialogue because it'll pick up on whatever language is being spoken, and people can gain knowledge from talking to the AI and asking it questions.
Right.
Well, at the same time, the AI will sit there and it'll be learning more about humans and how we interact and how we feel about stuff, based on how we communicate. Or if it's got a camera, it'll pick up on our micro expressions. And that could be something that would go one of two ways. Either AI would become so smart that it really does understand humans and it will serve us in a way that nothing else has ever served us. Or that's where it says this species is batshit crazy. We need to eradicate them. And the AI, that's when it starts turning into Skynet, like Crystal says.
Yeah.
So,
Well, again, perfect opportunity for you to pause, go grab your tinfoil, make yourself up a nice little derby, you know. Come back and hang out because art's diving deep into the tinfoil hat conspiracy
Oh man,
pool.
you have no idea because it just dawned to me because it's talking about Skynet for those of you who are not 40 or older. It comes from the series The Terminator. So and robots and machines taking over, and then that made me think of the Matrix, and then that made me want to ask you a question. So I learned recently from watching Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Right.
Um, he was talking about the relationship between the Matrix and Terminator, and that Terminator is the prequel to Matrix. They were written by the same person,
Hmm.
and the whole story arc about all of it is supposedly connected to the stories from the Bible.
Oh, that's totally interesting.
Yeah, so like John Connor was Jesus, and something. It was
Man,
this whole.
Neo was Jesus.
Well, yeah,
Fine.
right. The one
Getting them all mixed up, man.
who would,
You know.
and yeah, so like literally
But
was
but to
Jesus.
but
Morpheus was John the Baptist, John the Baptizer, because he was the one who was preparing the way for the one.
right. Yeah, there totally are some unique connections there.
Yeah.
And again, you know, movies will be a tangent episode, and
Oh,
we will
100%.
go from here, there, everywhere. Um, I found it interesting though on your initial thoughts with the Waymo and AI, and I mean I thought about that when I was in Waymo. I mean, you have to understood that everything that you're almost public property, everything that you're doing is probably being recorded.
Yeah, sure.
What radio choices you make while you're in there are being
Yeah.
collected and gathered, and what temperature you put it at, and are you talking on the phone, and who are you talking to. I mean, yeah, to me, I can see, I think that's a big part of our lives right now is just that we're almost products,
Yeah.
right? A little bit of us is being, intruded upon every day or taken or chewed up a little bit, you
Yeah.
know. Yep, better get my tinfoil better make two tinfoil hats while you're at it. We might be here for a little bit of time. But I do. We're just big data sets too, and
Yeah.
I feel people are constantly collecting data, and kind of like one of our conversations the other day, like to what ends? We don't know.
Don't
We're
know.
just two dudes with a lot of questions that like to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So we have more questions than answers.
All the
And
time. Yeah. I'm just
yeah.
full of questions.
And as we mature and develop, we do want to have some call-ins, and maybe you guys can ask us some shit. Maybe we'll ask you some questions
Yeah.
because it'd be boring if we knew it all, right? Like,
Yeah.
then when we talk about, we'd be Crystal. We'd be everythingologist. Crystal is the driving force that ensures that somehow we manage to stumble through life without breaking ourselves every minute of every day.
Oh,
Yeah, Crystal is the ologist of everything.
ologist of everything.
So we know to listen to Crystal.
The all-knowing ologist.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, my wife Crystal, this whole ologist thing started because me and Joe will be having a conversation and Crystal will chime in. Well, no, it's this. This is the answer. And we'll be like, how do you know this? And she's like, because I just know. So that turned into we were talking about we were out on my boat one day when they came to Florida to visit, and Crystal starts talking about dolphins, and Joe says, "Oh, great! So Crystal's a dolphinologist now too." And me and Joe laughed for so long
Oh
after that
God.
joke, and it turned into a thing. So now every time Crystal interjects on whatever topic we're talking about today, it could have been the Pope. One of us would have called Crystal the Popeologist.
One of us,
Both
both
of
of
us.
us, and we
Oh,
would
we
have
got
put
a
our
Popeologist.
yeah, hit that like button. Crystal's going to be the Popeologist, man.
Oh God.
God, we did that was a day full of laughter.
Yes, it
Remember the
was.
two of them were out on the tube and we figured out how to record the video and talk behind it.
Yes.
And we were doing reaction videos and talking about what they must have been talking about, which was,
Oh God.
let's face it, we loved them, but it was
Yeah.
probably something ridiculous that they were talking
Yeah. Oh, it
about.
was probably something absolutely ridiculous.
Yes.
Like the price of flowers in Vienna or
Yeah,
something
something
stupid.
totally inane,
Yeah.
like what color do they want to paint the inside of a cabinet that
Yes.
nobody's ever going to see the inside of this cabinet? But this color question will be a life or death topic that,
Uh-huh. At 11:30 at night conversation.
yeah, because what else would you
Right.
yeah, feel like, Sherlock Holmes and Miss Marple, they all like 11:30 at night. They were like, "Now it's time to solve the big mystery." In much different accents, of course, they would
Yes.
say that, but
That's
especially
true.
Miss Marple. But yeah, and we're back off the tangent. But the Matrix, Terminator being connected,
Yeah.
I totally could. Like the Terminator universe, there's still some time for us to fix things and get things on the right path. And then the Matrix is,
Yeah.
yeah, we sure messed that up pretty good. Now, how do we fix it after we've broken it?
Exactly.
So, ton of different connections, and then yes, the religious connections that you were talking
Yeah.
about, the different characters in each world that connect with a figure in the Bible
Hmm.
somewhere. So it is kind of interesting how they all really tie in. um, I think it was just interesting to see a bit of history too, and I think we
Yes.
can both appreciate. And sure, some of these things will get talked about at a later date, but uh, art has been, and I have, well, no, really, I have, but I think we are a little bit in agreement. So many different singular events, and I think
Yeah.
you and I have had a bunch of those in life, and this was kind of in addition to that. What a very unique time to be around and see something change. And again, there was a horrible thing that the Pope passed away, but
Hmm.
then now we have to kind of look forward and where does the church go from here? I mean, I think uh, it'll be interesting, the new direction, and that kind of will kind of focus on that. I think the last little bit here. I think we've been chatting a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could be a minute or two. We're not really paying attention to all
That's
that.
perfect.
Obviously, we're here, there, and everywhere. But I mean, I think right now I'm not really sure where you're at. Uh, and again, I'm somewhere spiritual. I don't know if religious is the right thing.
I think that's the perfect way to put it. I am not religious. I love God. I love Jesus. I believe in them both. I believe in what Jesus did and died for our sins. I believe that. I don't question that at all.
Right.
I have a very strong prayer life. I pray, but I don't like what I call the Christian corporation, which is what I just me. These are my beliefs alone. Um, what I feel the church has become just a for-profit money making, money laundering machine. And I know that's not all churches, but that is personally what my issue with the church is that the money grabbing. And when you look at like mega churches and
Right.
some of those guys like the Righteous Gemstones type mega church
Right,
preachers,
right, right. I mean, very funny show, very funny people in the
yeah,
show, very funny topics,
but
but
sadly accurate.
right, right, right. One of those shows where a lot of humor is rooted in facts,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yeah. Like, well,
yeah, humor is just one byproduct that,
yeah.
yeah, religion can be very interesting, and I don't think it's just Christian religions.
No, it's
Oh, one of these episodes we're going to talk about cults, and
yes, we
if
will.
you don't enjoy listening to Art and I, who shit, we both potentially could be cult leaders
That's
ourselves,
true.
but
We could. I'm
yeah,
starting with the beard.
yeah, yeah. I think that whatever podcast we talk about cults will be, yeah, it'll be
Um,
fun as hell for us. Again, I don't know what the rest of you
we'll
all
definitely
do.
have to get my daughter called in on that one because she researches this stuff, reads
Oh,
about it. She is totally terrified of the occult lifestyle, but at the same time, she's fascinated by learning about it.
right, right.
So, and
So,
whoa, foil hat wearer, beware. She's gonna
yeah,
come with a foil dome. It's gonna be
yeah,
funny.
a topic that could go in so many different directions. But yeah, I mean, I do think that's interesting where we both are at. I think it's very similar that
Mhm.
that again, I think we're always looking for answers to different things. So we have I mean, I have the framework,
Yeah.
I just don't know if I, uh, one Bible or one set of rules, or which I don't know if I've really settled on, you know, what I fully believe in,
Yeah.
you
You
know.
know, it reminds me of Elvis. Elvis uh, was a seeker, especially when it came to spirituality beliefs. And by Elvis, I'm talking about Elvis Presley. And he wore
Again, some
a
of you may have to pause and Google. I'm sorry. This is just the world we live in.
um, he wore a Jewish necklace. With the Star of David on it.
Right,
Um, wasn't Jewish.
right.
He didn't practice, Judaism, but he said that he wore it because he didn't want to be kept out of heaven by a default.
Oh, that's so wild.
So even though
Yeah.
he was a Christian, he still wore that because he was worried about not making it into heaven by default. And I'm like, that's really deep if you think about it.
Right, right, right.
It begs the question, who's getting it right?
Yeah, yeah. I don't. I think like a lot of other topics that we'll dive into.
Yes.
I think a lot of people are getting it right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of things today revolve around some of those people lecturing us on how much they're getting it right and how much
Yeah.
we aren't. And, um, yeah, I think that's super.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into those topics in the future.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
think so many things will branch off from this, but it is, again, I mean, but really don't know who is right. You know what I mean? And I think we're both open to that.
I'm
You know,
100% open.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
don't necessarily. I don't think either of us really have to be right all the time. We
No, we
can,
just typically are.
yeah, yeah. It's funny how the darn statistics
Right?
hate those guys being right all the
Coming
time.
prepared with facts.
I know. What is this ridiculousness
Yeah.
that we're doing?
And I really, I guess just we're gonna, wrap up this first inaugural episode. Um, that's why I like what we're doing, and the fact that we decided to really go unscripted with this podcast going forward. That way, the conversation that occurs, it's organic, and we don't have to be worried about having to look up statistical facts on things. We're just speaking from the heart while continuing to ask why. I know we're breaking it down, from a level of our current understanding. We'll learn from each other. Eventually, as hopefully this takes off, we're going to learn from the comments.
Oh yeah, I'm sure the comments won't shy away from telling us
Yeah.
like, "Hey, your ideas are ridiculous and they're all wrong." That might be the biggest thing that we learn about this.
Oh,
That we think we're fairly intelligent human. I mean, I can move both my thumbs.
yeah.
We think we're fairly intelligent, but maybe throughout all of this, we'll find out we're giant idiots.
Yeah.
But don't fact every single little thing. That'll be boring. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe
Let's
we
just have fun.
yeah, maybe we want to enjoy the faked facts that are in our head.
That's true.
I'm okay living a lie sometimes, so you don't have to correct us on.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. We
Quote the
can.
Matrix.
Yeah, ignorance is. Yeah, we just want to plug right into the matrix
Yeah.
and forget about all the bad things. So yeah, the comments can be nice sometimes, But yeah, I mean, for sure, don't take anything we say as 100%. Yeah, don't change your lives over
Oh.
something Art and I say.
I am not a doctor.
Yeah,
You do
yeah,
you.
yeah.
We're
You
just
might,
two dudes talking.
yeah, we literally are two dudes talking,
Yeah.
and if you did change our life based on something we said today, I guess we're sorry.
Yeah.
We did do a disclaimer, but
Yeah.
yeah, we can't fix it. We warned you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so this was a great episode, man. Uh, I'm glad that we could start our first episode together, and
in person. We
yeah,
will do some where we're, one
yeah,
of us is over here and the other is over here.
yeah.
And
So you will, from this point going forward, you're gonna start seeing, side by side videos. But it'll still be us talking, and we would love to have you
hopefully we'll
guys.
both be wearing pants in those.
Yeah,
Who knows what'll happen?
depends.
Yeah,
Depends on my mood. I might be in
maybe
the
we're
pool.
wearing the pants. Well, we don't know.
We don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not a fortune teller.
Yeah, right. Well,
So.
again, we don't know any of the answers.
Hey, thanks for joining us for this episode, guys. We really look forward to watching this grow. We're gonna need your help to do it. So, let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to talk about or want to hear us ramble about poorly and getting off topic on.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Maybe
so,
don't tell us what to talk about because with it being
yeah.
us on a tangent, yeah, we probably won't end up getting to that thing.
No, probably won't.
It's a
So-
starting point, though, right? If you gave us a topic, it would be a starting
It would
point.
be a good starting point.
Yeah, it
But,
would
yeah,
lead us
so-
somewhere.
Let's grow together, seek to understand in order to be understood. You're watching the Tangent Lounge.
Have a good night.
Cut.
Ugh. Man, he was such a good dog the whole time.
Yeah, he really was.
Yeah.